The Republican Party, it tells us, has become a workers' party, which is they're the exact opposite. They're not. But the complicating detail is finding ways to lift incomes for low-wage workers that meet the party's approval. Given that the low-income workers' money is bad because that creates a disincentive to work. But regulating a higher minimum wage is also no good because that kills jobs. Uh, but the government subsidized health insurance or child care is also problematic. And encouraging the formation of unions to give them more bargaining power is totally unacceptable. That leaves just one Republican-friendly way to increase living standards for low-wage workers: a tight labor market that forces employers to bid up their wages. And now, as it turns out, the Republicans don't like that method either. This week, Chipotle had just announced it would raise its prices by 4% to cover the cost of paying higher wages. The National Republican Committee, Congressional Committee, had pounced on it with a press release attacking the Democrats for having engineered this catastrophe. The Democrats' socialist stimulus bill caused a labor shortage, complained a Republican spokesperson, and now burrito lovers everywhere are footing this bill. Of course, you wouldn't expect Republicans to praise the economic results under a Democratic president anyway. But what's interesting is that this is a story that they chose to highlight. And it's hardly impossible anyway, because it's hardly impossible to find bad or discouraging signs in the economy as of right now. But there are indicators in the economy that at least give a hint that the Democratic recovery strategy might not work out. By forcing employers to pay higher wages for fast food workers, it's exactly what Biden's economic program is trying to do. The Federalist, which has built its reader base by amplifying Donald Trump's lies in ways more traditional than the conservative outlets are too embarrassed to follow, but they have published a column expanding on the official party line. The author, Kylie Zempel, has written several hundred words expressing outrage that the fast casual joint has jacked up the price of her Chipotle order. Zempel is specifically angry that Democrats have engineered a tight labor market, forcing Chipotle to raise the wages, but restaurants have had to bribe current and prospective workers with fatter paychecks to lure them off their backsides and back to work, she complains. But that's what happens when the federal government steps in with the sweet unemployment deal, incentivizing workers to do a little less labor and a lot more lounging. Well, yes, and that's not wrong. But if unemployment is not penalized with absolute deprivation, workers have more leverage to demand higher pay. Zempel attempts to convey this chain of decisions in a tone of horror. In an effort to bring on an additional 20,000 workers, Chipotle announced in May that it would raise its average hourly minimum wage to $15 an hour by the end of this month, the same dollar figure Democrats have pushed at the federal minimum wage. But the putative objection to increasing the minimum wage is that employers would eliminate jobs because they don't produce enough value to make that wage profitable. But now that employers like Chipotle are finding that they can pay that wage, and the only cost is a rather modest increase in prices, it turns out some conservators simply object to working class employees making that much money anyway. See, if it was the Republicans' idea, they would keep us poor. That's what their intent is. They don't want us to have all that money. Unless you're in some government Congress thing, then they don't give a shit. But yeah.